Have a Nice Death is a 2D action roguelike where you play as Death. Your first thought is that you're going to be collecting souls. That's wrong. Instead, you play the CEO of your company, Death Inc., not a very original name, who handles reaping souls, but your employees have run amok. After reaching your breaking point, it's time to get the company back in working order. So you go floor to floor by a magical elevator fighting junior employees to reach their managers, which, as you might expect, are the bosses you must defeat to win the game. The floors each have a unique aspect to them. For example, the Solary department will have some extra cash for you, or equipment storage will have a new weapon. Some of the others have obscure names, and I'm not 100% sure what they are or what benefits there are for going there. And I guess it doesn't even matter that much. There's even a cute employee break room between zones. I really like the theme of Have a Nice Death. A somewhat cheeky corporate, someone is stealing food from the fridge vibe. But the characters are weird, and while sometimes the game had me rolling my eyes, it always seemed sincere. Anyway, each zone where you defeat a boss has a slightly different color palette, which I think could have been a little better. Have a Nice Death is a little drab, and the areas feel very similar. But with each zone, there is a change in enemy types, so at least the combat switches it up. Before I go too far, I should mention that if you die, you start all the way back in your office and you must set out yet again to defeat the bosses you've defeated before. So you must sort of complete the game in one run. Note that you do get more powerful the more you play, and that there are unlockable elevators that take you straight to bosses. However, you would be missing some of the power-ups you can find on your way to the boss. For example, more health, more mana, and the new weapons. Every run is unique because you're never quite sure what you're going to find, which keeps the combat interesting. It's my favorite part of the game. It has a nice flow where you can dance around the screen moving enemy to enemy. It can be a little frantic at times though. It's quite a lot of aerial combat here, which makes the upgrade to aerial combat damage actually worth it. I've never found an aerial combat upgrade worth it before. So you have your main scythe weapon, but you can also carry two others. These are used on a cooldown, and there are different kinds. One leaves a toxic cloud of poison around you, which I quite like, but it can be annoying when you blow your smoke and the enemy moves away from it. Also, it doesn't feel as impactful since now they're only poisoned. Then there are other weapons like a spear. Yep, just a spear. Note that the spear doesn't use mana though, and having two weapons that use mana might be tricky. Your mana doesn't refill that quickly. Also, after a few runs, your main scythe weapon can be switched out for a different version. There's one where the blade is on a string and you can pull enemies close to you. If nothing else, it looks cool. Another version is slow moving, but it hits harder. It's really up to your playstyle, and I didn't find a reason to choose one over the other. As I said, I really enjoy the combat. It's fast and they give you a lot of opportunities to move around. The enemies don't move around that much. They will all take shots at you though. Almost all of them have a ranged attack. Now, attacking enemies stuns them, and so the game rewards you for being more aggressive. There's no animation canceling or anything fancy though. Playing careful and dodging around is always better than diving right into every situation since there's so little health available. Generally, you move through a level killing only a few enemies on the random platforms that are around, and they're pretty easy, almost laughable. Then the game locks you into an arena and you have to fight spawning enemies. The arena is pretty tight and it is a little bit trickier, but the enemies don't move so much, so you kind of just have to move around the screen and defeat everything you can as fast as possible before they attack you. The game is trying to chip away at your health, and it's also kind of stingy about giving it back to you. You'll need glowing orbs that only slightly heal you. There are item drops that heal as well, but those are, of course, also difficult to come by. This game is challenging. Before you ask, yes, we are on the same page. The gameplay reminds us both a lot of Dead Cells. with how the levels are structured, and the flow of both games is similar, especially since you always restart a run in the same place and have to fight previously defeated bosses. Even the individual level layouts feel very similar. That said, Dead Cells is better, especially in the level design. Have a Nice Death feels basic and repetitive, almost maze-like, even though the levels are on the smaller side. They do include a map. I never used it. The game is missing any sort of intrigue. There's nowhere to explore and no secrets that I could find. Moving on to in-run upgrades, which mainly take the form of curses. There's a fine character that lives in a coffin, or maybe they are the coffin, I'm not really sure, and they show you 3 curses to choose from, one of each of the 3 different kinds, and they're color-coded red, blue, and green. I can take a guess at the difference, but it wasn't really explained or in a clear way at all, I don't know. And each color has a tree, but that also wasn't explained. It's not important at all. I always just picked the curse that I thought would help me the most. Note that you don't have to pick one though, which comes in handy when you realize some of the curses can have a downside. Also, each time you see the coffin person, they will have a new selection to choose from. Now the system is fine, but unclear what the downside of the curse is going to be. It feels weird. The whole system is weird. That could have been simplified. It doesn't wreck the game though, you can just easily ignore it. At the end of each run, you gain experience for everything that happened, which they call a performance review. This is a hell job simulator, so it checks out. You're judged on several KPIs, or key performance indicators, like how many enemies you killed or how many bosses you defeated. Then that's converted to ingots that you can spend, but that's not the most important part. There's an overall character level which makes the game a little easier. For example, the shop might have an item on sale, or you can unlock an elevator that takes you directly to the first boss. And in this way, you can see how Have a Nice Death gets a little easier the longer you play it. So with these gold ingots, you can buy new weapons between runs that will be unlocked on your runs. At this point, it's a pretty standard way to introduce new items for the player at a good rate in these types of games. What's interesting is that your actions directly influence the price. For example, if you defeat the first boss 2 times, then a weapon will have a 95% reduced price, which is pretty cool. So you're incentivized to meet the requirements first because some of the items are quite pricey. It's not like you couldn't eventually afford them though, as by dying and saving up your ingots, but it's nice to have that discount that you've experienced that part of the game enough that maybe this content will make it easier for you to get a deeper run. The game does get easier as you play. If you have too many ingots for some reason, you can also use them to buy cosmetics for the office. I had some pumpkins and Christmas presents unlocked already, and you can see how they look here. I also did buy some spooky balloons because I just wanted to see what they would look like. The art is very nice in this game, so I could see being interested to buy them, but also I'm not a cosmetics person, so I really wanted to spend my gold on the new weapons I could unlock. Overall, Have a Nice Death is an above average game, maybe a 6 out of 10 if I was giving those kinds of scores. It's good. I'm enjoying the combat, and the corporate humor is definitely something I think is funny. This all feels very familiar though. At this point, it feels like the formula for a quick action roguelike is defined, and you must check these boxes. Well, Have a Nice Death checks those boxes, so if you like these kind of games, you'll probably enjoy this one too. It's not as good as Dead Cells, but honestly, that's kind of to be expected. That game seems to be creme of the crop, and nothing's going to beat it anytime soon. Thanks for watching. If you like the content, hit the subscribe button. There's also a link to my Steam curator in the description, which will get you reviews of the games right in Steam. See ya.